I was on jury duty for a pretty serious assault case. The defense attorney was doing a great job of creating doubt. He was grilling the victim, asking, "Did you actually see his face clearly in the dark alley?" The victim hesitated. Suddenly, the defendant stands up, slams his hands on the table and screams, "Tell them the truth! You didn't see nothing, because I was wearing a ski mask." The defense attorney literally face-palmed, put his head down on the desk, and didn't move for a solid minute. The judge just sighed and asked the court reporter if she got that. I'm a court reporter, and the hardest part of my job is not laughing. We had a guy in for a DUI. He was arguing that he wasn't drunk behind the wheel. The officer testified that the man had failed the field sobriety test miserably. The defendant insisted on cross-examining the officer himself. He asked, "Officer, if I was so drunk, how did I manage to reverse the car perfectly into the ditch to avoid hitting the mailbox?" He thought he had checkmated the cop. The judge stared at him over his glasses and said, "Sir, you just admitted to driving the car into a ditch." A couple was getting a divorce, and it was incredibly bitter. They had already split up the house, the cars, and the bank accounts. They were in court arguing over who got custody of a parrot. Apparently, the parrot had a very foul mouth. The husband's lawyer argued that the wife taught the parrot to insult the husband. To prove it, they brought the bird in. As soon as the husband started speaking, the parrot squawked, "Shut up, Gary, you cheap loser!" The courtroom erupted. The judge ruled that the parrot clearly had a bias and awarded it to the wife. I saw a case where a guy was suing his neighbour for emotional distress because the neighbour's dog kept barking. The plaintiff was acting very dramatic, claiming he couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and had PTSD from the noise. The defense lawyer decided to test this. He pulled out a squeaky toy from his briefcase and squeezed it. The plaintiff immediately barked, loudly, like a dog. It turns out the plaintiff had some psychological issues where he mimicked sounds, and the neighbour's dog was actually reacting to him barking all night. Case dismissed. During a robbery trial, the prosecutor was holding up a piece of evidence, a very distinctive bright orange hoodie that the robber was seen wearing on CCTV footage. The defendant whispered something to his lawyer, who looked horrified. The lawyer then asked for a recess. It turns out the defendant had whispered, "Hey, make sure I get that hoodie back after I win. It's my lucky hoodie." The microphone at the defense table wasn't muted. The entire jury heard him claim ownership of the robber's clothes. I was representing a landlord in an eviction case. The tenant hadn't paid rent in 6 months. Her defense was that the house was haunted, and the ghost told her that currency is a social construct, so she didn't have to pay. She actually brought an EVP recording to court. It was just 10 minutes of static noise. At one point, she shouted, "Did you hear that? The ghost said free rent." The judge looked at her and said, "Unless the ghost has a job and can cut a check, you're being evicted." My dad is a judge, and he told me about a guy who was caught speeding, going 110 mph in a 55 km zone. The guy represented himself. He argued that, based on the laws of physics, specifically the Doppler effect, the radar gun was inaccurate because he was moving away from it so fast that the light waves distorted. He spent 20 minutes drawing diagrams on a whiteboard. My dad listened to the whole lecture, nodded and said, "That was a fascinating physics lesson. However, the officer paced you in his car for 3 miles. Physics doesn't explain why you didn't stop for the sirens." I witnessed a trial where a woman was accused of shoplifting several expensive perfumes. She claimed she had never been to that store in her life. The prosecutor pulled up the security footage. The woman in the video had a very unique, large tattoo of a dragon on her neck. The defendant in the courtroom was wearing a scarf. The prosecutor asked her to remove the scarf. She refused. The judge ordered her to remove it. She took it off, and there was the dragon tattoo. She then looked the judge dead in the eye and said, "It's a twin tattoo. Lots of people have this exact dragon on their neck." I was a juror on a case where a guy was suing a grocery store because he slipped on a grape. He claimed he had permanent back damage and couldn't lift anything heavier than 5 pounds. He came into court with a cane, walking very slowly, wincing with every step. We went to lunch, and I happened to go to a sandwich shop a few blocks away. I saw the injured plaintiff there. He was holding his cane in the air, carrying a heavy tray of drinks for his family with both hands, laughing and twisting his torso. I sent a note to the bailiff when we got back, mistrial declared. In family court, a father was trying to get out of paying child support. He claimed he had no income and was completely broke. His ex-wife's lawyer asked, "If you have no money, how did you afford the trip to Cabo San Lucas that you posted on Instagram last week?" The guy panicked and said, "That wasn't me, that." My account was hacked by a guy who looks just like me and goes on vacation. The lawyer then projected the photo on the screen. The guy was wearing a t-shirt that said, "World's Best Dad, Gary," his name. He lost that argument. I sat in on a small claims court case where a woman was suing her hairdresser. She claimed the hairdresser cut her hair too short and ruined her life, causing her to lose her boyfriend and her job. She wanted $5,000 in damages. The judge asked to see a picture of her hair before the cut. It looked exactly the same as her hair in court. The hairdresser then produced a text message from the woman, sent the day after the haircut saying, "I love it. It's so sassy." The woman tried to say she was being sarcastic in the text. The judge wasn't buying it. A sovereign citizen was in court for driving without a license or registration. He kept interrupting the judge, yelling, "I do not consent. I am a free inhabitant of the land, not a corporate entity. You have no jurisdiction over my vessel." The judge, who was clearly tired of this, finally said, "Sir, if you are a vessel, then I am the harbour master, and I am ordering your vessel to be dry docked in the county jail for 30 days for contempt of court." The look on the guy's face was priceless. I was a witness in a case involving a bar fight. The defendant was claiming self-defense. His lawyer asked me, "Did you see the victim attack my client first?" I said, "No, your client threw a chair across the room before anyone touched him." The defendant jumped up and yelled at me, "You liar!" "I didn't throw a chair, I threw a bar stool. There's a big difference." The lawyer just closed his binder and sat down. There wasn't much he could do after that. Someone tried to sue a dry cleaner for ruining a pair of pants. This wasn't just any lawsuit. He was suing for $54 million, citing mental anguish and loss of enjoyment of life because they were his favourite pants. He was a judge himself, administrative law judge, so he should have known better. He argued that the satisfaction guaranteed sign in the window was a binding legal contract that meant he should be satisfied no matter what. The actual judge in the case looked at him like he was insane and dismissed it, making him pay the dry cleaner's legal fees. A young guy was in court for vandalism, graffiti. He had tagged his nickname Ghost all over the city. He pleaded not guilty. The prosecutor asked him to sign a document acknowledging his rights. He instinctively signed it Ghost instead of his legal name. He realized his mistake immediately and tried to scribble it out, but the bailiff snatched the paper away. The prosecutor held it up for the jury. It was practically a signed confession. The jury deliberated for about 5 minutes. I saw a case where a guy was accused of breaking into a house. The homeowner said the burglar entered through the dog door. The defendant was a very large, heavy-set man. His lawyer's entire defense strategy was, if the glove doesn't fit, but with a dog door. They brought a replica of the dog door into the courtroom. The lawyer asked the defendant to try to squeeze through it. The guy got stuck at the waist, and they had to call maintenance to dismantle the frame to get him out. He was acquitted of that charge because it was physically impossible. There was a custody hearing where the mother was claiming the father was an unfit parent because he was obsessed with conspiracy theories. The father took the stand to defend himself. He started off normal, saying he loved his kids. But within 3 minutes, he was explaining that the judge was actually a lizard person, wearing a human skin suit, and that the moon is a hologram projected by the government to track our sleep patterns. He lost custody, but he did offer the bailiff a pamphlet on flat earth theory on his way out. I represented a guy who was caught selling fake luxury watches. He insisted they were real. In court, he tried to prove their authenticity by smashing one with a hammer, claiming the sapphire glass wouldn't break. He took a hammer, whacked the watch on the evidence table, and it shattered into 1,000,000 pieces of cheap plastic. Shards flew everywhere. He looked at the mess and said, "Well, that one must have been a dud. Let me try another one." The judge stopped him before he could destroy more evidence. I was in traffic court waiting for my turn. A girl was called up for running a red light. Her excuse? "Your Honour, I was checking my horoscope on my phone and it said, 'Don't stop for anything today,' so I thought the universe was telling me to go." The judge stared at her for a long time and said, "Well, the universe didn't tell you about the $300 fine you're about to pay. Next time, listen to the traffic laws, not the stars." A man was accused of stealing a car. He represented himself. During the trial, he cross-examined the owner of the car. He asked, "Is it true that your car has a faulty starter and you have to jiggle the key specifically to the left to get it to turn on?" The owner said, "Yes, that's true." The defendant turned to the jury and smiled, looking proud. He didn't realize that he just proved he had driven the car enough to know its quirks. Guilty. I worked as a clerk during a messy divorce. The husband was trying to hide assets. He claimed he lost his $50,000 Rolex in the ocean while swimming. Later in the trial, his lawyer asked him to check the time for a specific timestamp on a text message. The husband instinctively pulled up his sleeve and looked at his wrist, where the $50,000 Rolex was sitting. The wife's lawyer pointed and shouted, "Objection! The evidence has resurfaced from the ocean." A guy was on trial for drug possession. He had been caught with a bag of white powder. His defense was that it was just baking soda for a science project. The prosecutor asked if he could test it right there in court. The defendant agreed, confident. The lab tech came in, tested it, and it turned bright blue, positive for cocaine. The defendant looked shocked and yelled, "Man, my dealer ripped me off. He told me it was cut with baking soda so it wouldn't test pure." The silence in the room was deafening. I was a juror on a case where a woman sued a fast food chain because her coffee was too hot. Not the famous case, a copycat. She claimed she spilled it and got burned. During the trial, she brought in a cup of coffee from the same place to demonstrate. She started yelling, getting worked up and waving her hands around. She accidentally knocked the new cup of coffee onto her own lap. She didn't flinch. It was room temperature, but she didn't react to the spill at all until she remembered she was supposed to be injured. Then she did a delayed scream. It was pure comedy. A defendant was charged with robbing a convenience store. The clerk said the robber had a very distinct, high-pitched voice. The defendant's lawyer told him to keep his mouth shut no matter what. During the lineup identification process in court, the clerk said, "I can't be sure unless I hear them speak." The prosecutor asked the defendant to say, "Give me the money?" The defendant shouted in a deep, fake Batman voice, "Give me the money!" The judge asked him to use his normal voice. He said in a high-pitched squeak, "But that is my normal voice." I saw a guy in small claims court suing his ex-girlfriend for the return of gifts after they broke up. He had a list. It included things like a half-used bottle of shampoo, a teddy bear he won at a carnival, value $0.50, and the $12 he spent on a movie ticket 3 years ago. The judge looked at the list, looked at the guy, and pulled a $20 bill out of his own wallet. He handed it to the bailiff to give to the guy and said, "Here is full restitution. Get out of my courtroom and grow up."